Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining this afternoon's Cuppa Club with Kayla NT, MBE. I hope I pronounced your surname correctly.
That's right.
From Thank you, from BHESCo, Brighton and Hove Energy Services Cooperative, and Kayla is founder and CEO. My name is Paul Pizzala, and I'm senior investment manager at Ethex, the direct impact investing platform, working with Kayla, working with Kayla and her team at BHESCo to launch their bond offer. So before we get into the juicy stuff, there's a little bit of housekeeping to do, and I'd like to let you know that Cuppa Club is recorded. This is not a financial promotion, and if you do need advice, please talk to a financial advisor. So, as many of you will know, the Cuppa Club usually runs for 30 to 45 minutes, and it is a fantastic opportunity to ask questions and understand why BHESCo is such an impactful organization and how the team aim to achieve their goals. So please do feel free to drop questions into the chat box, and we'll take those as we go along. So to refresh, BHESCo are offering an investment in a renewable energy bond with a target interest rate of 5%, which is also available in a tax-free IFISA wrapper on Ethex's platform. So without any further ado, Kayla, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Kayla Enty, and as Paul's already said, I'm the founder and chief exec of Brighton and Hove Energy Services Cooperative. We own and operate around 50 projects. We've developed a lot more, but we don't own them. Basically, our fundamental desire is to accelerate the energy transition. And so we will help our customers in whatever way they need in order to achieve that end.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So, Kayla, I'm going to ask you some questions, and can you talk about? We're going to ask you some questions about BHESCo, why you set it up, how it's grown, and what you aim to achieve with this bond offer. And I know that BHESCo's Brighton and Hove Energy Services Cooperative, so it's not just about solar on roofs. There are other aspects to the business too. So maybe you can kind of talk us through, why you set it up originally, how it's grown, and what you're aiming to achieve.
Yeah, since I was a kid, I've always been very connected to the environment. And during my lifetime, I have seen the environmental degradation that has happened. And in the 90s, I was working for an energy supplier in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam. And at the time, I was working in the renewable energy group, and it was one of the first, I believe it was the first European company to offer a green electricity product. And I was doing all the financial modeling for them. My background is I'm a qualified accountant, and financial modeling is kind of my expertise. And during the course of doing that, I realized that there are two primary barriers to the uptake of renewable energy. And this was in the 90s when solar wasn't even financially viable. It wasn't an economic solution that we really could do at scale. So most of the work I was doing was onshore wind. And I realized that technical barriers and finance barriers are going to prevent the uptake of renewable energy in the way that we need to see it happen. So imagine that trajectory from the 90s when I made that realization. I won a prize for the company I was working for. It was called Nuon for financing. At the time, it was solar thermal because I could make that work economically. And that basically became the pay-as-you-save model. that we use today. And so it took me, that was say 1998. BHESCo was founded in 2013. So you could see how long it took, 15 years of working through my mind how it was going to work. And of course, it evolved over time, because at first it was going to be a limited company, and I tried to do it in London, but that didn't work because I couldn't get the cohesiveness of a community to work together and to develop the projects. So I moved to Brighton because I had quite a large community there. I was doing consulting for SEDA at the time, the Southeast Economic Environmental Development Agency. And so I was able to set it up in Brighton. And it changed from a limited company to a social enterprise, because when I moved to Brighton, I saw the extent of fuel poverty. There's quite a lot of fuel poverty in Brighton and Hove.
Yeah.
I think people might be surprised by that, but there really is. And I visited homes where I thought people shouldn't live like this. And the problem is that it's not just the way they're living, but it affects their health. It affects their mental and physical health. And I wanted to do something about fuel poverty. And it just made economic sense that if you are providing energy at lower cost, which solar and wind is lower cost, then you're going to be able to offer that energy at a lower cost to people so that they can afford it. And it was kind of a virtuous circle, and that became the way that BHESCo operated.
Right. Brilliant. That's thank you so much for that rich textured background in terms of your industry experience and how you've applied that to BHESCo and some point, community, developing a business that serves people, providing lower energy to people, costs to the people that need it the most. And energy poverty is a real, unfortunately, is a real thing today.
Yeah.
I in this particular bond offer, so you're aiming to raise between 300,000 and 540,000, I think it is, Kayla, with a target of
580,000.
580,000, my apologies. With a target 450,000. So 300, 450, and 580,000. Those are the min target and the max amounts. And that's going to install a series of rooftop solar arrays in selected schools. So this is a slightly long-winded question, but I'll get to the punchline. And I thought your introduction letter in the offer document was really very eloquent and spells out the impacts of what you're aiming to achieve as an organization, and explaining why this is such a practical way to invest, to do something that has real and intangible impacts. But I wondered, for the benefit of the audience, can you talk about how the solar on the school roofs, how that creates a financial savings for the schools, the reduction in carbon, what impact does it have on children's education? Why is that so critical? And then can you quantify what the intangible aspects are, or at least have a go? And I can remind you of those 5 bullet points as we go along, and pick out those impacts, and aim to give the audience a bit of color on what those are and how you go about thinking about them, quantifying.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a multifaceted question. And I will start on the savings. There's different revenue streams from solar. There's the price that the school will pay for their electricity, but there's also value in the electricity that they don't use that you export to the grid. And back in the day, there used to be a feed-in tariff as well that you could add in, so you could further drive down the price. But really, what it's about for us is looking at considering all those revenue streams and then getting the price as low as possible to the schools. Basically, we have to recover our capital investment costs. We have to cover our interest costs that we pay to our investor members, and through the price that we charge to the schools. And we have to make a small profit. We're a social enterprise. We're a not-for-profit enterprise, but there are things that happen that are unexpected. One of the schools that we currently own and operate the system there. During half term, some teenagers threw rocks on the solar panels and broke one of them. So we had to replace that, of course, at no charge for the school. And so these things that happen will add extra cost to our project, and we need to have contingency. So we need a small profit to cover that. And so at the end of the day, though, the schools do save. Some of the schools that use more electricity and have larger systems, so the capex on those investments is lower. The capex per unit of electricity is lower, so we can pass on a lower charge. And then the smaller systems have a higher capex per unit of electricity, so those will have a higher charge. But on average, the charge is about a 25% discount on what they're paying to their energy supplier, and we pass that through to the schools, so they have some extra money. And every year we report on the savings that they earn compared to what they would have earned. And as we see energy prices go up, the schools have more and more advantage. The schools that we did with that had the feed-in tariff are really saving quite a lot of money. And we estimate that over a period of time, I'm just trying to pull up the document from my colleague because he graciously prepared all this data for me. And we will be saving per school about 51,000 kilograms, so 51 tons of carbon emissions per year on the schools. And the lifetime savings is 1,300, say, tons of carbon emission savings. And the financial savings, oh, for God's sake. Sorry, I'm having
whilst you're looking at your screen, Kayla, we're getting a few questions coming through. I wonder if I can pop one of them into the talk. So from Ron, he says, if I understand correctly, at the end of the 25 years, there is a surplus of £1,375,000, 340, 1.375 million. Let's call it 1.4 million. What is the plan for this? Can you sort of like tie that into
what to do with those carbon savings?
Well, yeah. What is that surplus 1.44 million? He's asking.
I don't understand.
Okay, don't worry. Let's move. Let's carry on. Let's carry on talking about the carbon saving.
I really don't understand what that question is. Maybe he can clarify exactly what he's trying to understand.
Okay, we can do that. We can do that. Um, so we talked about the reduction in carbon, so 51 tons per school.
Yeah.
Um, what did how do you? Sorry, Kayla, you were going to say?
No, I wasn't going to say anything. It's just
All right. So okay, so what is the, the, the impact that BHESCo? How do you work with the kids at schools in terms of their education?
okay. So I've done quite a few assemblies where I talk about what it means. And it was really interesting because at one of the junior schools I went to, the kids were planting trees that same day. So imagine the solar array that we installed at their school, which was Patcham Junior. They that saved about 1,200 trees could be planted every year to equate to the amount of carbon emission savings from the solar array that we installed. And those kids were probably planting about 200 trees that day. And it was really a big effort. All the kids were involved in that tree planting exercise. And so it gave them a great way of understanding the immensity of what solar panels can do in terms of the environment and the difference that it can make. I also talked about battery storage in one of the schools, um, and what that will mean for their future energy use. And one of the schools that we're installing in this bond offer will also have a battery. And so we will go to the school and explain how that system is going to work. They'll get a monitor in their reception area that will show them how much electricity is being generated from the solar panels and what that means. And we like to work with the schools and get it into their curriculum, their science curriculum or their sustainability curriculum, so that we can work together with them to help the kids understand how this works.
Yeah, brilliant, perfect. So they get a real sense of how the sun, the solar panels, the energy, all of that carbon cycle connects. So and of course there's the pestle power that children have to their parents as well in terms of telling them the story.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the schools that we're installing at, the total savings in terms of carbon energy, we expect to generate about 263,000 kilowatt hours per year. And that should save them over the lifetime, over that looks like about 2.3 million pounds. That's what we're estimating. And we conservatively estimate the amount of increases in market prices, because it's very, very difficult to predict what's going to happen with the market. Nobody knew that Russia was going to invade Ukraine and what impact that was going to have on global prices. But I should also say that it's not only schools that we're installing. We're also doing an industrial estate. We're doing a business park. The industrial estate is going to be a microgrid. And that is super exciting, where we're putting in the cabling between the units and the industrial estate. It's really a first of a kind, and we're quite lucky that we have the owner of the industrial estate is so keen to drive down carbon emissions on the estate. So to have a partner like that is really invaluable for us. And then the third project is a leisure center. And that's great because we can use the solar power to help them drive down their costs and really provide a community facility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing. That's fantastic. And um, I sort of I gather that one of the features is about where you're designing the system, particularly sharing of solar power amongst businesses. At the industrial park you just mentioned, can you give some more detail on the innovations?
Yeah. Um, so we're working with the owner to, when the roofs get replaced, we put solar on it immediately. Um, and because the occupant of that unit wasn't using the electricity, all of the electricity that was generated for the size of that roof, but the unit across the road was, because they're a chocolate manufacturer and they're also a B corporation. So it was kind of the stars aligned and we were able to provide on-site solar to help them meet their B corporation goals and their values and ethics, by putting a cable underneath the ground and running it into their unit as well. And the owner of the industrial estate wants us to also share it with some other units. So we'll run the cable into there and give them access to that solar from that one unit, really. And so it becomes a kind of a microgrid.
Yeah.
We don't have to use the electricity grid that's provided by the distribution network operator. We install our own grid, which is great because then it doesn't affect standing charges. It's all outside of the regulation because we're managing and owning and operating that grid on behalf of our customer.
Right. Yeah, fantastic.
There's no
Yeah.
standing charges associated with our rates. It's all incorporated in the kilowatt hour price, and we're still able to offer an
Yeah,
extreme.
you might have to explain that standing charge point. So it's not if you're not in the industry, it's not absolutely obvious why that is a good thing. So it's about how the tariffs are priced, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, standing charge, you get charged regardless of whether you use any electricity or not. It's a fixed charge. It's like a sunk cost. This way, you don't have any cost. If you don't use any of the electricity from the solar, you don't pay anything.
It's a purely variable cost, which is great, right?
Yeah, exactly. Purely variable, good for our customers. We want them to be happy, and we want to meet our goals, which is delivering clean energy.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Um, couple of less financial questions. We do do have a look at that one from Ron at the bottom and see if that clicks into your the right hand side, your financial brain. But
Yeah.
from Jeremy, he asks, does this project tie into the Brighton Energy Co-op, which is also putting solar panels on the schools in Brighton?
No, we're a separate organization. We're an energy services cooperative. So at some point, we'll look at the heat provision in these units and help them decarbonize their heat. We also look at insulation and energy efficiency. We'll look at the entire building fabric. Whereas Brighton Energy Co-op do great work, but they're restricted to basically putting solar on commercial units.
Right. Okay. Okay. So you're sort of like you're thinking about the total energy picture in a way.
Yeah, and we also do domestic. So we're going to do solar on communities. and tie that in together, and hopefully at some point be able to share that solar across the grid between the households. So we're really looking at how we're going to scale up our activities to really drive forward the energy transition.
Yeah, fantastic. And Brighton, of course, is a great place to do that because there's more green-minded people around, right?
Yeah. We work with Brighton Energy Co-op, though. They're a great group of guys, and we've done fuel poverty work for them, for example, with their community fund. So we're definitely associated with them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. And then a question from Amanda. So it says, how many people does it? She asks, how many people does it take to run BHESCo? And question mark, paid, voluntary.
Yeah, we have 11 paid members of staff, including 2 executive directors, myself and Diane Smith, who's the operations director. There's 4 non-executive board members, and we have a couple of volunteers who've been working with us for, I think one of our volunteers has been working with us for six years. And then people come and go. We try and work with as many people as we possibly can. If they're interested in working with us, there's always stuff they can do.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
We're like a business. We're definitely a business. We have an annual budget. We stick to that budget. We look at the budget and how we're doing compared to that budget. We run it like a commercial business, but it's a social enterprise.
Yeah, perfect. And so sort of, I think this next question from Alan, he says, with the changes with planning rules on land-based wind turbines, are BHESCo planning to do any projects? Now, I don't want to second guess your answer, but I'm sort of thinking, maybe you're the sort of organization that sticks to your knitting. You do what you're good at.
No, we do everything. So we become good at it. We have a lot of very highly qualified engineers, very senior technical people working with us, very talented engineering team. And we are going, so very soon there's going to be a grant program for communities to apply for. And we're going to work with definitely Ovingdean, because they've been interested in onshore wind, for example, to look at how we can decarbonize heat. And we've done 5 projects on this, where we look at local generation and then converting oil heating, for example, which has a very high carbon emissions factor, into electric heating systems and generating that energy, that electricity, to feed those heating systems through onshore wind. We get a lot of wind at the sea coast, so we really should, since it's one of the cheapest forms of electricity generation. And he's right, the policy is changing. I think that the government can no longer deny or avoid the fact that we have to drive down energy costs and keep them affordable for the people.
Yeah.
And onshore wind is a way to do that.
Yeah. I'm just interested to get your view as well, Kayla, because when I read the headlines of the newspapers, it's something like 60 or 70% of our electricity comes from renewable energy. Well, then when I sort of dig a bit, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but when I look at the total energy mix in the world, it's something like 10% comes from renewable energy. So the story has got a long way to go, right?
Well, it was 2% in 2010 before they introduced the feed-in tariff. And then it went up on average, because in winter, the solar doesn't perform as well, but the wind really kicks up. So we would have days in the summer, like last summer in June, we had days where 100% of our electricity was generated by solar. And we'll have days in the winter where 100% is generated by wind. But on average, it's about 46, 47% throughout the year that's generated by renewables in the UK, which is not bad in 13 years' time that we've been able to achieve that. And if we could get 100% in the next 13 years by really installing quite a lot of onshore wind and offshore wind and floating wind offshore, I think that we would really drive down prices. And, you know, the issue is for a lot of energy suppliers is if you're generating that electricity for free from the sun or from the wind, you're going to have to drive down your prices quite substantially, and your business models are going to have to change. So there's a lot of change that has to happen in the energy industry, really, and it's moving far too slowly compared to the way it should be going.
So what does that mean for BHESCo in terms of how do you plan your business model for volatile energy prices, both on the upside and on the downside? What does that what sort of runs through your team and your mind when you're planning
Well,
for that?
about I would say it was probably about 7 years ago that the national grid came out and said that decentralized energy is really the way that we should be moving as a nation. And BHESCo is a very important part of decentralization of the electricity provision. And we also do heat as an energy services provider. But for us, it's the vision of communities generating their own electricity, owning a share of that. So actually benefiting from their own utility and helping, that's going to help them decarbonize the community. So the way it's working now is a lot of communities are writing local area energy plans, and we're just finalizing one for the Marches region. And in that plan, about 80% of the electricity provision will be associated with onshore wind. They have very high, there's some areas that are outside areas of outstanding natural beauty, where it would be quite interesting to put onshore wind. And so the prospect, the economic prospect, and for prosperity and for the environment and social benefit of this community ownership of energy provision and clean energy provision is huge. It's not the whole solution, it's part of the solution. We still need very large electricity generation for manufacturing. It's too bad that super battery station in the Teesside hasn't gone ahead, because that would have been an amazing prospect for the nation in terms of dealing with intermittency of renewables. But we'll get there. I have confidence that something will happen.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant. So I was just checking I wasn't on mute there for a second, Taylor. Okay, and then just if you were to sort of gaze into the crystal ball and let's just say there was a change in government in 2024 and it went from a Conservative government to a Labour government, does that change the landscape at all, or does it not make a difference, do you think?
It might change the landscape significantly if Labour take a bold stand on their energy strategy. There's quite a few problems with the current energy strategy. There's insufficient investment going into the grid. It was even left out of the 10-point plan, although it's the most important aspect. Our grid needs to be updated to handle a decentralized electricity generation infrastructure. And so if we can change the system to allow private investment into the networks so that it doesn't impact the energy bill payer, but it's a different investment model. If labor can do that, and if they can forget about nuclear power, because nuclear power is far too expensive and it's a distraction from where we have to be as a nation. If all that can happen and they can work more cooperatively with community energy and support us, we will be looking at a completely different landscape. That would be my dream.
Yeah, yeah. And in the meantime, the business works and the community benefits and businesses benefit. So it,
Yeah, it's a win-win for everyone because we have people who are contacting us all the time, business people, entrepreneurs who are really struggling to pay their energy bills and keep their businesses running. Well, what does that say for our local economy? And it's only there's really no downside to it. It creates more equity. People have more access. When people are warm in winter, it helps their confidence. It puts them back into the labor pool. It's just a win-win for everyone.
yeah, yeah. So important to be able to reach people at the local level um, through organisations like yours and Brighton Energy Co-op. And well, is it something like 350 community energy organisations up and down the United Kingdom doing this incredible work? So it's really quite a thriving industry, actually.
Yeah, I think there's 280 community energy groups across the country. And part of what we do is support other groups. We talk to other groups and we try and help as much as we can within our limited resources. But we're quite advanced in terms of what we do compared to other energy groups. And so eventually we will become more of a mentor once we reach the level of scale that we want to achieve.
Yeah. And I wonder if I've got a question from Alan. He says, with interest rates going up at banks, are you finding 5% on the low side for investors? I think that's sort of like a slightly double-edged question because maybe part of it's aimed at me, and I'm not going to answer that.
Yeah,
Straight
let
off the
me
bat.
answer it because we have really set that rate. And it's not that interest rates are going up anymore. I believe that we have plateaued on interest rates. Interest rates are used as a mechanism to control inflation. Inflation is actually starting to decline now, thankfully. And hopefully we're at the top of where we are with interest rates. The issue is for us is we always refer to Thomas Piketty, who is a very famous French economist. He's a socially minded economist. And he's done a study over centuries in different countries and analyzed the impact of what he calls returns on capital, which is basically interest rates, and how that has impacted our social and environmental fabric. And we've really seen that since the 80s when we've had an incredible boom in growth. Interest rates have remained relatively low for quite some time now. And we've seen this huge shift of the super wealthy people and then very poor people. So we've seen this schism, and also we're experiencing the environmental degradation that has caused. And we're seeing that now really clearly of what's happening with climate change. And so we stick to 5% because we do not want to contribute to that environmental and social degradation that's associated with rewarding people at a higher interest rate for their money. We see ourselves like a utility. We are a very safe investment. The equipment that we install generates electricity. It's going to continue to generate electricity. And so on a safe investment like that with very little risk, we don't see why we have to, and we wouldn't pay more than 5%. But it's a nice bond. So if you have an ISA, you can use that to achieve a higher effective rate through your taxes.
You can get a gross interest rate of 5% in an innovative finance ISA, which if you're a higher rate taxpayer and you're paying 50% on that, you would, it does make a big difference, doesn't it? In a gross, it makes it quite an attractive interest. Well, makes it a very attractive interest rate actually. But thank you for that very comprehensive answer, Kayla. I'm not sure that the audience will kind of get a lesson in political economy, but they've got it, and I think it's important to
it is important
think about these bigger issues, actually, isn't it? Because they don't sort of come up in everyday sort of conversations. It's really good to, see the depth of your commitment and thinking in terms of what you're
aiming. Yeah, no, my background is in economics. I'm very interested in economics. And Kate Rayworth's book, Donut Economics, if no one has read it, I highly recommend that book, along with Capital from Thomas Piketty.
Okay, great. Brilliant. So we're going to pick up with Ron separately. I think Diane's probably going to get in contact.
Yeah, Diane can speak to Ron and answer his questions directly. That's no problem.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And then we're sort of getting to that point. We're almost up to 45 minutes. So I'm going to ask you if you can kindly summarize the impact, the risk and the return with a call to action to our audience and potential investors, please, Kayla.
Yeah. So we will be investing in these 8 projects. Each of the contracts associated with these projects is over 25 years. And so they're long-term arrangements, which means they're like annuity contracts. And so the income is contractually arranged. There's very little risk associated with these. The benefits for each of the participants is quite large, with total lifetime savings for each of them at almost £4 million over the contracted period. So it brings economic value into the communities where we're working. It helps the schools because the kids really could see hands-on the energy transition and experience themselves. And it gives them hope. Anyone with children knows what the impacts of climate change are having on our children. And investing in these kind of projects can help make a big change and give kids a new perspective on their future. And we're also demonstrating different business models that we will be rolling out. The healthier BHESCo becomes as an organization only improves the safety and security of your investment. We've always paid interest to our shareholders because this is the 4th funding round that we've done with Ethex, actually. So we work very closely with Ethex. We love Ethex, and the carbon emission savings are also quite substantial. So it really is a win-win, and I would encourage you to be a part of it.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. That's a great message. So thank you, Kayla. That's been fantastic. Thanks to the audience for taking part. As the offer is now. It is live on Ethex's website, so please do go and take a look. It's moving fast. It's up to 20% of its target, so that's great. That's what we'd like to see. So thank you once again for your time, and that remains to say is for Kayla to say thanks and goodbye.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for your interesting questions. I really appreciate your engagement and your listening, and I hope to welcome you as a member of BHESCo.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.